Well, the honest answer is no. No, I don't think she does. I think she's lost credibility with the public. She's lost credibility with the markets, and I think she's lost credibility with her MPs. And you just can't survive in that situation.
I mean, she's liked to draw comparisons with Margaret Thatcher. Other people have possibly less so. But Margaret Thatcher kind of owned her mistakes, didn't she? Do you think that's one of the problems here, that Liz Truss isn't owning those mistakes?
Yes, and I mean, I think it's even worse than that. I think actually she's in denial. She, as Michael Gove famously said, was took a holiday from reality during the leadership campaign, and there's still a sense in which that's the case. Even yesterday, Greg Hands was going around, as you said in your introduction, denying the obvious. And I think even yesterday, Liz Truss in that press conference, that bizarre press conference, she looked like she was almost taken hostage. She talked about restoring economic stability and the importance of fiscal sustainability, but then she just went back to her script, and every question she was asked was growth, growth, growth. And I think she feels that's, she is a one-trick pony, really. That is the trick. And I don't think she's able to flex to circumstances. And with Mrs. Thatcher, there was a great deal more substance to her, whatever you thought of her politics. She could really rise to the occasion. For example, the Falklands War. She had the kind of inner metal and the sense of who she was to change as circumstances change. And I don't think that Liz Truss is capable of doing that.
We know, of course, Margaret Thatcher's views on U-turns, but do you think a U-turn can ever be positive? I mean, some people would argue that, OK, it's been tricky deciding not to go ahead with getting rid of the 45p tax rate, and then obviously the U-turn on corporation tax as well. But other people could say, it is a strength, at least she's listening.
Well, I think it is. It is a strength. I think it is a strength to listen and, to flex to circumstances. It's just that she's giving the impression really of not listening. At the press conference yesterday, she didn't really seem to be listening to any of the questions that she was being asked. And she says she listens, but then she said basically that she was right, that they had the right strategy. It's just they did it a little bit too fast and without sufficient preparation. And I think that's what she genuinely believes. And, she sacked her chancellor, but he was, as she said herself, in lockstep with her. Basically, she's sort of almost got a split personality now. She said, Kwarteng got it wrong, but I still got it right.
And so with Jeremy Hunt being appointed as Chancellor, I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng is quoted, sources close to him quoted in the Times today, saying that that's just bought herself a few weeks, but the inevitable is going to happen. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And I think it might even come earlier than a few weeks, because I think that, everybody saw what they saw yesterday and it wasn't good. And I think that the Tory party is facing obliteration. It may be that Jeremy Hunt can steady the ship for a little while, but he is still, very inexperienced. And I think she's very determined. And I think it's going to be an unhappy marriage, if I can call it that, between the two of them. And I think what MPs are recognising is if they don't act quickly and decisively, then this situation is just going to get worse, and it's bad enough already. I have a lot of sympathy with one of your callers who said, take the sticking plaster off. It may hurt, but I think you better do it quite quickly.
I guess some people as well are putting forward the view that Jeremy Hunt is essentially unsackable now. And even yesterday, I mean, one of his closest allies, Steve Bryan, was quoted as saying that Liz Truss is effectively the chairman, and it means that Jeremy Hunt is the chief exec. I mean, is he going to really be essentially taking over, and she's going to be sitting there as prime minister, but not really making the decisions?
I don't think that's going to work. I mean, I've seen deeply uncomfortable relationships between prime ministers and chancellors, and it's never a good thing. And I just don't think she's going to accept that situation. And I'm not sure that Jeremy Hunt is entirely up to the situation. Remember that of all the candidates that were put forward for the leadership campaign, I think for a lot of us, it was quite surprising how poorly he did, how few MPs supported him, and he didn't really have a kind of strong brief. He was actually calling for a cut in corporation tax, even more than actually Liz Truss has just was seeking to do in her budget. So I'm not sure that he's really the right man for the job. I think, it's a sort of situation where it looks good perhaps for a while, but I think it will fall apart.
Mm-hmm. And questions now, I mean, you're right, he couldn't even get 30 MPs to back him in the leadership contest back in July. I'm just wondering, looking forward, I mean, people now talking about the 31st of October, of course, this is when this medium-term fiscal plan is going to be, or certainly Kwasi Kwarteng was planning to bring it out. Do you think that's going to have to come forward?
Ideally, I think it has to, but, of course, it's going to have some terrible news in it. And this will be the next problem for her, because we've got something like 25 billion of unfunded tax cuts, and she's going to have to cut public expenditure in real terms, certainly. And in the meantime, there are kind of massive calls, on the public purse. The health service, for example, is in a dire state, as we all know, social care. So I think some sort of very hard truths about the situation will come out in that fiscal statement, which are going to be very, very unpopular, even if they do go down reasonably well with the markets. And Jeremy Hunt's got to have a little bit of time to get his head around all of this. He can't just sort of rustle these figures up. I worked in the Treasury for 9 years, and these things are not just done in seconds. So, they might be able to bring it forward by a week, perhaps. But really, I think they need the 2 weeks. And yet the markets, I think, want to see this. The markets were not entirely satisfied with what Liz Truss put forward yesterday, judging by the sort of, what was happening after she spoke. So it's a really awful situation. And I have to say that even though Jeremy Hunt is an experienced minister, much more experienced than almost anyone else in the cabinet, apart from Liz Truss, he's not ever worked in the Treasury. And so, it's going to be a pretty cold start for him. And being Foreign Secretary is really not the same as being the Chancellor. It does take a little while to kind of get your head around all of these different dimensions of spending, the taxes and so forth. There's a lot for him to do, a lot of relationships to build. I don't envy him his job, actually.